to make the same damn amount of creative, the same amount of landing pages. I still got it does not change my workload at all. And this is one thing that bugged the shit out of me when I was a dealer principal. And it was just like, I remember I had this great campaign on a Mitsubishi Outlander. It worked out really well with this company. I was like, this was good. I felt good about this, okay? I think I'd spent maybe a couple grand with them. Next month, I was like, I want to spend $5,000. I want to keep going with this. I feel good momentum. We're getting good translation to the dealership. I like what I see online. Like, it's cool. Let's keep doing this, right?
For freshly brewed discussion on automotive sales and marketing, this is Coffee with Jason. The Coffee with Jason podcast is sponsored by Closer's Coffee. For that full-bodied, rich, sweet flavor with a bright acidity. Drink Closer's Coffee, stay caffeinated, and keep on closing. Find out more at closerscoffee.ca.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here with Digital Dealership Solutions. Hey, thanks for joining me another episode of Coffee with Jason. I have a very special guest today, Mr. James Grace from Vermont. Thanks, James, for taking the time to come jam with me today. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Jason. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, everyone out there that don't know kind of who you are and how you got started in the industry and what is the origin story that is James Grace, if you can kind of take a couple minutes and share the information with the audience, it'd be a great place for us to start.
Yeah, sure. So I went to engineering school. I got a degree in electrical and computer engineering from Carnegie Mellon, and a lot of my master's research there was funded by General Motors. So I thought when I started school I was going to go work for Google or Facebook or Apple or one of these big tech companies in Silicon Valley, and instead I did some cool research. In the early days it was cars talking to each other wirelessly, and ended up getting recruited into GM, and that's how I started in the auto industry. Fell in love with our industry, driving the first prototype Cadillacs off of a assembly line. I worked on the first, the all-new CTS that we did back in 2008. So anyway, that's sort of how I got into the industry. And then
that's cool.
From there, I was on the tech side on the OEM, so designed a bunch of, probably the most interesting thing is I have a patent on TiVo for cars. So listening to an NPR story or something, and you stop for gas, you can hit the pause button instead of sitting there and waiting for it to finish.
That is so cool.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. And then I crossed over to the marketing side. I grew up in Vermont. My whole family's here. And in 2014, we decided to move back. And I ended up at dealer.com in charge of analytics. And then we got bought by DealerTrack, and then we got bought by Cox. And I ended up in charge of analytics across all of Cox's digital operations, or on the media solutions side, Kelly Blue Book, Auto Trader, dealer.com. And then about 18 months ago, I decided to start Wisely, and so that's what I'm doing now. We have a bunch of SaaS products trying to help dealers and the rest of the industry kind of use data in smarter ways, and actionable analytics is what we say we do. For
I like that. I like actionable analytics. That's pretty cool. So you took the proverbial dive into doing your own thing. That's yeah. I'm always curious and fascinated by kind of how that process comes about for people. Was it just a eureka moment for you one day? You're like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna do this myself. Or was it kind of a build-up?
I think definitely a build-up. I think certainly up until that time, I had worked at a series of big companies between General Motors and Panasonic.
Yeah, I think I've heard of those somewhat large companies. Yeah. Okay, we're talking really big companies, yes.
And, at some point you start to look back at your life and your career and think, when did I really enjoy what I was doing? Not the most, right? Like, what am I really excited to get up in the morning and do? And those early days at GM, I mentioned to you before that I worked on that Cadillac, and I knew every millimeter of that car.
That's pretty cool.
And my responsibility was the whole center stack of that car. And the first time we built a prototype car and it came off the end of the prototype line and we turned the key and it started up, that was a real great moment for me. And so I realized that as time had gone on, I hadn't done that kind of work a lot recently. And so the thing I like most about Wisely is I'm coding again. I do all the dev for our products myself, which is, means a lot of late nights and early mornings. But, and so it's sort of reignited my passion for tech and, building stuff that is actually useful and interesting to people. And so that was really my motivation. It was sort of, I wanted to build something again, to do the real actual coding, actual work. And then, there's all kinds of other stuff running a business of that, I don't have a marketing department or an HR department or so you get to do, I pollinate a lot of flowers. I like to do coding in the morning and a podcast in the afternoon and legal paperwork in the evening. The variety of that is really attractive.
It is, and I think and it's funny you said it, because it's actually one of my favorite things too. It's getting up in the morning, and it's having that routine of just being uncomfortable. Having to get out there and do things that it's like, yeah, it just has to be done, and it's just at the end of the day, the buck stops with you, so you got to do it. So you've had this opportunity to work for these large companies. You've had access to data that, as a marketer, I gotta be honest with you, I'm a little jealous. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Just a little jealous. All right. If I could sneak a peek, for 24 hours at some of the data that you've been able to take a look and digest and see, man, would that'd be something else. So you've had these opportunities. You've been in the industry long enough to kind of see these curves and these changes and these adoptions and marketing efforts and operation efforts. What are you seeing right now? Like, where do you see, the opportunity is for that ABC Motors dealership in urban, any town?
Well, first of all, I think what was fun about my job at Cox was, you did have all of that data, and I went to a lot of meetings where, my job was to sort of stand up and sing and dance around the interesting things that we had learned. And while that was fun, I often felt like I would go and give a presentation and people would go, "Oh, that's interesting. That's, he seems like a smart guy. I didn't realize that before." But then the conversation would quickly shift to like them actually doing their job. What campaign are we running next year? Or next month? What's my budget? And so I started to feel like, well, this is fun to a certain extent, but am I really impacting the business here, which is where, I get the most enjoyment, is doing something people care about and that is important. So that's where I sort of started to focus on the actionable side of things. Of analytics is only interesting to a small subset of people if you're not actually doing something with it. So
data is only as good as what you actually do with it. Like,
I always say
it'd be a paperweight just sitting on your desk doing absolutely nothing, or it could be worth a lot if it's used.
Well, there's a big difference between data and information, right?
True.
You can drown in data pretty easily. Converting that into information is a different story. So anyway, to answer the question you asked me, I think probably the biggest opportunity I've seen developing over several years, and we're sort of at close to peak right now, I would say, is the amount of money that dealers are wasting on SEM.
Yeah, I agree.
Over and over again, I see huge budgets, and linking that to any sort of sales result, the mental gymnastics that our industry goes through to try to demonstrate ROI is fun to watch sometimes. But I do think that that's the biggest opportunity, where some small dealer somewhere, when you need to tighten your belt a little bit, cut your SEM budget.
Well, what's funny you say that, because when I originally started my agency, I started with the intention of not doing SEM. But actually getting real, true, grit, dirty, organic efforts, through well planned out and thought and creative and time and creating actual content. What it came down to? Dealerships didn't want to pay for it. they didn't want to pay for long-term organic efforts. I told them, I said, look, you want to be, I don't know, in your town, you want to be number one result for a Ford F-150. Okay. Well, I'm going to need about 6 to 9 months, and I'm going to spend a lot of time deep diving into what people are focusing on, what they want to focus on. I'm going to look for opportunities in organic here and there. And nobody wanted to pay for that because it didn't fall into a 30-day cycle.
Yep.
And then Google AdWords
Yep.
shows up, and I can flip a switch, and there's my ad. And the money, we were talking about this earlier, just kind of turned in and flowed into a point where it was just an ATM. Dealerships were just putting in their digits, and Google is taking their money.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about our industry, and I even saw this when I was back on the OEM side of things. My first job at General Motors was I showed up on day one, and they said, we want to put hard drives in cars, and your job is to figure out what to do with them, which is honestly a pretty backwards way of doing product development solution or problem, but whatever, that's a different story. But I quickly learned there's automotive grade everything. So you can't just put a normal hard drive in a car. You have to put an automotive grade hard drive. You can't use a normal resistor on a circuit board. It has to be an automotive grade resistor. And so that translates through marketing as well.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting thought experiment is like, why don't more dealers use HubSpot for their CRM? Right? I use HubSpot for my CRM.
Yep. I use Zoho, which is similar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, I use Zoho. I started out with their CRM, and I migrated to HubSpot for a couple of reasons. But there's all of these tools that, and why don't we use them for automotive? And it's because there's automotive grade everything. And so the whole scalability problem is interesting. So if you're like dealer.com, for instance, and you got to support thousands of advertising clients, you can't do that without some machine scalability. So, it figures out what inventory you have and what campaigns should run. You hit the button and the campaigns launch. So there's a certain amount of that's necessary because what automotive grade means is more requirements and less volume.
Yes.
Which almost always translates into a pricing and profitability challenge. And so if we don't realize that, somebody has to pay for all that extra work and lower volume, right? So I understand the vendor side of that, where they've got to do some level of automation. However, on the dealer side of that, I find often they don't even know what keywords they're bidding on.
No,
it's sort of, I write the check. It's an OEM approved program, or I trust the guy that calls.
Check off that proverbial box saying I did my job.
I've found people spending thousands of dollars bidding on exact match of their OEM.
I see it all the time. I am telling you, I see that crap all the time. Hell, I saw a vendor the other day actually reporting analytics on second page results. I'm not shitting you. I was just like, I was dumbfounded by it. I was like, I saw this report and I'm looking at these bounce rates and I'm just like, wait, what? That's really good. Second page results, that's what they were reporting on.
Well, I saw this so often in my previous world where if your goal as an analytics professional is come up with a storyline that proves the point you want to prove, if your goal is being as objective as possible and sort of understanding what's working and what's not, that's a completely different approach. And
very much so.
I don't think we often do enough differentiation between those two. I think there's a place for what I would call marketing analytics. So you want to put something on your marketing material of, we influence 90% of the car sales in the country, or whatever it is. Great, more power to you, and you should do that sort of thing, right? That's what marketing is. That's not the same thing as what's often billed as a performance review, where you're taking money from a client and ideally delivering them results. That shouldn't be an exercise in salesmanship. That should be an exercise in did we do what we said we were going to do? And
Well, see, I think
I don't see that happening.
That's where I see the fundamental thing starts. That's a problem actually where it starts, is that in these reviews, like, what are we reviewing? Results on what? Right? I find that, people will get into this, will start working, with a vendor or something like that, never have a defined goal and objective in mind. They just immediately start marketing. But I'm like, what the hell are you marketing? And why the hell are you even doing it? I mean, I sat in the other day on an OEM level. It was an OEM level webinar, and they were talking about results. This was an agency talking about their website results, and I was just like, it was just results, but not related to any very specific goal and objective. It blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, context-free, clicks or leads, or you see the same report over and over again. We spent this much money, you got this many clicks. Everything's great. Send us another check, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is with Wisely, we have a certain level of volume now. Certainly not what I experienced at Cox in terms of the number of clients we dealt with, but enough to be statistically significant. And when I look at, we track a measurement that's the percent of my spend that's assisting sales, right? So that's ideally you'd want that to be 100, but that's not marketing, right?
No.
There's some hit or miss ratio, but it's been decreasing over the past year. So if I look at the average across our clients, I would say we sort of started off in the 45%. So you're wasting about half of your SEM, which is a problem. I mean, I did a blog post about that's a significant impact to the bottom line of our entire industry. Just
100%.
SEM,
it's huge waste.
But it's going down. It's been down 10% over the past year. So the problem is bad and getting worse.
But we're marketing the same thing. I mean, we're putting the same creative out. I mean, do you not think at some point in time, I mean, we look at dealers, embracement of digital marketing, and it just kind of went up. But so now you just have, a majority of, I would say, over 90% of all dealerships, putting forth a very decent budget into digital marketing, but with the same bloody message as every other dealership out there, the consumer is going to get desensitized. I mean, I don't even think does anybody even give a shit about a $147 biweekly payment anymore?
No, I mean, I think you're right that it's that breaking through the noise is a challenge. And I don't know, it's interesting. When I start down these paths, I very quickly think to myself how hard it is to be a marketing manager for a dealership or a dealer group. The sales pitch from all these vendors is basic. Hey, we've got a turnkey solution. You don't have to worry about anything. We know you're a busy person. Just give us your money, and the results.
We'll take care of everything else. Yep.
And so that's what they're being sold. And then your typical marketing director is not only dealing with digital, but what color are the balloons and the wavy guy that's in the and did we do our juvenile diabetes fundraiser again this year? And then also more and more the vendor management guy for the whole dealership. So they're responsible for the CRM contract, and DMS contract, and trade pending, and everything. So it's an almost impossible job. And so it's sort of, I never want to get too critical of the way things are because I think that's a very, very difficult job. But I also think that the vendor community should do better in terms of.
Well, I agree. I think the vendor community needs to step up their game. But I mean, I do push that back on the dealerships as well. It's like, look, I understand that you don't have necessarily a lot of time. You do have to play a role of conductor. I get it. Your vendors intimately understand what your operational goals and objectives are. All right. And if they do, then the meeting shouldn't be necessarily, there's so much review going on. I'm just dumbfounded with the amount of time that's spent reviewing, but not enough time actually spent strategizing, coming to them and say, look, here's what my operational goals and objectives are. You are my vendor, my DMS vendor, you're my CRM vendor, you're my marketing vendor, you're my live chat vendor, you're my one of 52 different vendors. Okay. All right. Here's what my goals and objectives are. What are you doing to help me get closer to that? What piece of the pie do you bring to fit into that Lego that's going to become, that goal and objective?
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. You can ask anybody on either side, whether it's the vendors doing the call or the dealers receiving them, who's had a productive, useful, or enjoyable review call in the past 6 months. Good luck getting someone to raise their hand.
I agree with you. Yeah.
It's not adding value to anybody. It's not enjoyable to anybody. It's not improving anybody. Why are we doing it? That's the, to me, one of those things of like, let's find a better solution. I'm not suggesting I know what the better solution is, but when you're spending, I see dollar signs these days when, you're talking about meetings and how many people you've got engaged and
yep.
who's on a plane for the review call. And it's sort of,
it gets astronomical.
$10,000 or $15,000 on a meeting without too much effort. And that's a problem. I think we need to think more carefully about that stuff, I think.
And so it's not like that. Then I look at the vendors, and you know what? I do have to give vendors a hard time. All right. Look, for the most part, we're almost taking advantage of the fact, or a lot of vendors are taking advantage of the fact that the dealers, the general dealer body out there are not educated enough on best practices. So, there are vendors out there that are presenting strategies, utilizing keyword efforts that are easily 5, 10, 15-year-old strategies that still they're not relevant today, but they're able to just, spit shine on it and show it off as some shiny product when it's really nothing new at all.
I think that job's tough too, especially if we're just talking SEM, right? The margin is minuscule. And so, Google is really the one making out on that deal, where if you want to make any money selling SEM to car dealers, it's a volume play.
Well, it's a volume play for a lot of people that don't appreciate creative. See, for myself as an agency, we're more of a creative shop than we are a digital marketing agency.
You got to get people that are willing to pay for that, right?
That's the kicker. But I'm finding there's more and more of me type companies that are popping up everywhere. So I do see kind of a push in that direction.
Totally agree with you. And I think my advice to a dealer would be, okay, you're spending $10,000 on SEM a month on average. Spend $5,000 on a great creative agency and be willing to write them the check for their time and expertise. And then spend the other half on your actual media. Part of the problem in this whole thing is you've got these cost plus models where there's an incentive built in to have the budget be as high as possible. So if you as an agency, if your model is pay me $500 a month just to have the benefit of my time, and then whatever advertising you do, great. Those models are better, I think, but a lot of times they're not even approved at the OEM level to do.
Well, see that's a big problem right there, right? So we're a flat rate. We call it flat rate, right? Yep. If you want to spend $500 on the campaign, you want to spend $15,000 on the campaign. Look, at the end of the day, my workload don't change. I'm going to make the same damn amount of creative, the same amount of landing pages. It does not change my workload at all. And this is one thing that bugged the shit out of me when I was a dealer principal. And it was just like, I remember I had this great campaign on a Mitsubishi Outlander. It worked out really well with this company. I was like, this was good. I felt good about this. Okay. I think I'd spent maybe a couple grand with them. Next month, I was like, I want to spend $5,000. I want to keep going with this. I feel good momentum. We're getting good translation to the dealership. I like what I see online. Like, it's cool. Let's keep doing this. Right. And it sucks at that point in time. I was so busy in operations, I couldn't even do my own marketing. But then I got a bill that was just that much more higher. And it was like, because it was a percentage of my spend, I said, you know what? I'm not going to get angry with this, but I am going to make the phone call. And very politely, very professionally asked, okay, I understand that I got charged more for this. I just need to know real quick, for the difference between here and here, what additional work did you guys do for that amount of money? Nothing. Right. No one could give me a bloody answer at all what actually got put into additional work for the additional amount of money. So,
I mean, that's a reasonable business model, right? If everybody goes into it saying, hey, this is a percentage of spend, the problem is that it puts the incentive in the wrong place.
100%, because now my golden
I get
ticket
a
is
lot
for you
of
to spend more
pushback from
money.
agencies that I end up in a situation a lot where I've been hired to audit the spend or be the ROI guy, and then now there's an agency involved, and they of course don't like to be questioned or put on the hot seat. Or I get that dynamic, but fundamental to that is they have to keep the spend at a particular level in order to keep the doors of their business open. And so when your primary incentive is get the client to spend as much money as possible, regardless of whether it's actually working for them, that's a problem.
It is a fundamental problem. I totally agree.
That's, if I had to pick one thing to say, like, this is the problem in the SEM area of our industry, that's it. Almost all the incentives are based on a spend level rather than anything resembling actual business results. Google as well, right? If you're an agency, they'll put quality labels on everything all day long, but ultimately it comes down to, do you spend a lot of money with them or not? That's where you get to be the gold-plated 5-star platinum Google provider, right?
No, 100%. Hey, we could talk about, Google and Facebook kickbacks, and it's like, I know people don't realize it's a real thing, but it is a real freaking thing. If you're an agency of large enough size, all right, there's some significant money flowing around out there.
A lot of times that's the difference between a profitable business and a non-profitable business.
That's true. That sucks.
When you're on that much of a razor edge margin between running a profitable business or not, and it depends on whether some other company is giving you your kickback, or that's a problematic situation. And there's responsibility all the way around, whether it's starting from Google or the vendors or the dealer. It's a system that's been created that's not working very well for ultimately the consumer. And I would argue that the dealer is the one that's sort of getting shortchanged the most in that, because they're ultimately a small business, right? That's why I love this industry. Is you can find a car dealership anywhere around the world, and it's a small business serving local customers. So that's who's paying the price mostly for all this dysfunction. Is we got a bunch of franchised small businesses around the world that are struggling because of this situation, and I wish we'd do something about it.
And to your point, the consumer is the one that gets kind of the rough end of it, right? Because they're now given what I consider to be subpar creative efforts, all right, or just really subpar efforts altogether. And the consumer's just left thinking that the dealership gives a crap more about the transaction than necessarily creating a relationship with them. So it's like, a lot of the times the marketing doesn't even seem to match with the dealership's, culture or drive or team efforts, or even about in the first place.
Well, right. And a lot of times the dealer doesn't even have control over it. One of my favorite examples is email, right? Let's say your goal as a dealership is to have a consistent brand presence emailing your customers. I'm a small business owner, you're a small business owner.
It's important.
I want to be in charge of who's emailing my clients and what they're telling them, right?
100%.
And for many of these OEM programs, the dealer couldn't do that if they wanted to. They're sending out dealership branded emails that maybe, if you're really paying attention to the portal, or you can have a couple days notice that they're going to email all of your customers. But so it's hard not to just throw up your hands, right? And say, well, I can't control this. And then the consumer experience is, I got 5 emails from your dealership, different colors, different branding, different messaging, one, on the same subject 2 days apart. Like, who are you people drunk and disorderly? That's how we're perceived.
I'm literally working with the dealership.
Wants to control their little piece of it and not give, not allow for a holistic experience. It's a challenge for sure.
So what are your thoughts? Okay, because I have issues with the amount of involvement manufacturers are getting into when it comes to dealership marketing efforts. It's a wholesale and retail relationship, but it seems like it's going way beyond that. It's I buy my vehicles wholesale from the manufacturer, I sell them to the consumer retail. I'm the retailer in this. But it seems like just to be able to purchase wholesale comes with just this insane amount of stipulations or what I should be doing with my ad dollars. What is your thoughts and opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly make a whole podcast just on that topic, I think. What I would say to start out with is I think from the OEM perspective, I think it's the case that the majority of dealers are not putting time and energy into this is our strategy, this is how we want it, this is our email plan, this is our SEM plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's these OEM programs benefit a lot of smaller operators who really do just want or have the time for okay, I've got an SEM program, I've got a budget, make it work, do whatever the manufacturer says, right? So I do think that we like to make fun of that, but that's a very real benefit to a lot of dealers.
But we say that, but have you ever seen the stats on that? Because I've asked for it and I've never seen it.
We live in a snow globe, though, right? You and I are in the digital marketing business, so the people we're interacting with are the ones that are upset. But there's 15,000 franchise dealers in this country, right? Yeah. How many of them do you know by name? I mean, I've been in this industry for a while, and so I think a lot of times we get this echo chamber of our experience with a fairly small amount of people. So I'll start with that caveat. With that said, I think painting everyone with the same brush is the biggest problem. With these OEM programs, there ought to be a process where you could say, look, I get what you're trying to accomplish here, but I'm this dealer group, and this is my strategy. This is how I do SEM. This is how I do branding. This is how I do email, and convince them to leave you the hell alone. Right? There should be a way to opt out of the silliness, so that if you can demonstrate, I'm not going to damage your brand, OEM. I'm not going to compete with the guy that you have franchised down. All these things that they're legitimately worried about, right?
Sure.
If you can demonstrate a plan to not do that, there should be an opt-out where if I want to use my own homegrown website that I built, I should be able to do that and get the same co-op benefits as long as I can demonstrate to them that their legitimate business interests are being protected. I think that's the thing.
It's a certified program, which is I got no look. I have absolutely no problem with manufacturers coming out and saying, hey, look, we need at least have a baseline. All right, so it's like if you are going to do something on your own, we need you at least to be right here. But it's like some of these efforts get to the point where they're just straight up dictation. It's like you don't have an option. There isn't another opportunity for you to do. If you want to get those almighty co-op dollars, all right, that you are literally handcuffed to what you're able to say, who you're able to work with. Like I personally, I get a little ticked off. I think it's out of control. But I can say this though because I've been on both sides of the table.
Yeah,
I've been the dealer principal. I've been the marketing person. I've been the vendor. I've been the client. So it's like
yeah. I mean, I agree with you that I think it's if I had to pick, is it out of control or not out of control? If I had to give you a binary answer, I'd say it's out of control. And I do think that, co-op is an interesting one, right? I think I didn't realize until I started Wisely that the extent to which co-op is driving meaningful marketing decisions. And I'll give you an example. I had a client who was doing social advertising, and they were doing well. They were generating leads. They were cheaper than their SEM leads. They were doing content. They were launching it was a good, solid,
good strategy
marketing program. And I said, why aren't you spending more money on this? Your budgets for SEM are up here. You're spending a fraction of that on social. All the metrics are better on the socials. What's going on? Well, we don't. The co-op doesn't reimburse us for the social stuff. Well, why not? Well, because we do it internally. Well, can't you fill out the reporting? Well, yeah, but who has time to keep up with that? And we have to spend 3 days a month just making the reporting, and we don't have time for that stuff. So I realized that it's not just a bureaucratic pain in the neck. It's actually keeping people from making decisions that they would otherwise make. And so, we built this product recently. I call it Co-op Accelerator. That automates all of that reporting for people, just because I wanted to remove that objection. So, if agencies use it, or dealer groups, people that have better things to do with their time than spend 3 days generating co-op reporting, we've automated and that's sort of one of the things I mean by actionable analytics, right? I mean,
yes,
you can pull data till you're blue in the face, but actually using it to solve a meaningful business problem of co-op reporting, I feel pretty good about that. But I didn't realize until starting down this path how much that was affecting people's actual spend decisions.
Mm-hmm. If we're going into seasonalities, look, we have seasonalities in our industry. Like, we just have to accept they are what they are, right? This is the time of year where I do see a lot of reactiveness happen. I'm not saying that I don't see it throughout the other times of the year either, but it just seems like the level of just being incredibly reactive with our marketing efforts, and it just starts to increase this time of year. Is there any advice you can give to the listeners, the people that are watching, going into this season of, here's some good ideas, best tips, best practices?
One of the things I had told people over the years, I used to get that question a lot when I was at Cox, and I'd have to come up with some sort of, every month, this is what I think this month, for them to put out. And I think a lot of times it comes to, you started by saying it's the seasonality time of the year. So they know what's going to happen on Black Friday, for instance, or in December, or those last couple of weeks prior to it's not news. I think where we get reactive.
You think it's not news, but then it happens, and all of a sudden, they're acting like oh my God, it happened.
Lack of planning, right? So I think that's my major piece of advice is, okay, you know how to get from here to the end of the year. You should be having a conversation with your agency now about what campaign we're going to run the last 2 weeks of the year, rather than waiting for an angry phone call from the general manager or dealer principal saying we've got a target to meet. What's marketing going to do about that? So I think a little bit of planning, and some good old fashioned basic blocking and tackling with a content calendar and a campaign calendar. Just that planning for the end of the year, I think, would be my there's no silver bullet or secret sauce to it, other than what it's going to look like. The same thing happened last year. Plan for it.
It's being proactive, and I think that if I could gift anything to our industry as a whole, it would be the ability to just routinely be proactive in their efforts, both marketing and on operations as well, right? Now, one topic I did want to talk to you a little bit about, because it's coming up a lot lately. I'm doing a lot of 2020 meetings, getting ready for the new year and stuff like that, and I am finding more and more dealerships understanding that the value in Google is being the primary or almost the majority of their ad spend is not necessarily the best idea. They are asking the questions about, pushing more towards Instagram, pushing more towards Facebook, pushing more towards LinkedIn, pushing more towards, I even had a talk the other day with a dealership about TikTok. I was surprised that I had that.
I was thinking that too.
But I did have the conversation with them. I was just like, at least, and I think that's what the cool part about it is that at least I was having a conversation.
Yeah.
That may not be actionable, but the fact that they were willing to come out and say, hey, Jay, what about this? Is there something we should be preparing for? Is it something that should be on our radar? Is there a strategy? Is there an idea? Something along that lines? But for those dealerships out there that are looking down through 2020 and that are so much of their ad spends in Google, what should they really in 2020 be looking at? What is the best way to kind of diversify their marketing efforts going into the new year?
Yeah, one low-hanging fruit is usually Bing. So,
That's true.
And I normally get, strange looks from people when I say that, but one of the things that I've seen over and over and over again, whether it's at Cox or Wisely or dealer.com or wherever, the data says that traffic from Bing converts at a higher percentage than Google. Mm-hmm. So it's a much smaller piece of traffic, but often the conversion rate is double. So, and most people are spending zero advertising on Bing. So, that's one sort of easy thing. It's higher quality traffic. You're getting more. Now, why is that? It's because, it's the default search engine for Internet Explorer browsers. And there's a lot of people who are car buyers who don't bother to change their default settings when they buy a computer. So, I think that's one. I think secondly, I still think Facebook, Instagram is underrepresented in our industry. I mean, there are people out there that would say, it's too much. The volume is increased. I don't see that very often. I think I see a lot of people spending there. They're getting cheaper leads. They're getting cheaper traffic. They're getting, the conversion rates for our tools are better in terms of, it shows connection to more sales. So I think that's another one where people should spend more.
And I think it pushes us to be more creative conscious.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think of social media, and it is in the two words, second word being media, it is what level of media, what level of creative are you actually putting out there for someone to consume? We're not limited just to that black and white text of words, right? We actually do have to take time to think about who's going to consume this piece of creative, and why the hell would they actually want to engage with the piece of creative in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point earlier, that's a big opportunity for our industry as well, is some sort of meaningful brand differentiation. There's only you can only make a picture of a car so attractive, right? I mean, and that I'm saying that as someone who's in love with our industry and has taken a lot of pain to take beautiful pictures of cars. I think ultimately you need a brand message that goes over and above that, which sort of brings me to video as another one where you'll have people talking about everybody needs to be in video, and I am a believer in the power of video as a medium. Yep. I think my kids, like every other kids, are constantly, they spend 24/7 on YouTube, right? So but I don't think there are very many good video solutions for our industry. And again, that goes back to my whole automotive grade scalability. I think a lot of people have tried to solve for how can I automatically produce video content?
Yeah, they're looking for that quick fix. Exactly. In our industry, we like that. We like diet pills and quick fixes, and we just want the easy button. Where can I push the easy button? And this is actually where I think dealerships have a lot of opportunity, because this is where they can really kind of differentiate themselves, right? We produce more video than I would have ever thought we would have, right? Yep. I went into this business, and now my business has almost transformed 3 different times just in the last 5 years. And, now we're known as being a video agency. We produce over around 100 videos a month for dealerships across the country. And, one of the options I would have never thought someone would even be interested in is a dealership shoots a video, but then it sends it to us for what we call the fix, and because there's still an element with video that you need to have talent to produce. You need to have talent to edit it. You got to take time to do it. It is a time consuming thing, but man, a well-edited piece of video that comes directly from the dealership, and it's able to evoke an emotion. It's able to create either laughter or sadness or piss somebody off, or it can support both education and entertainment at the exact same time. Like, it just from a creative perspective, there's just so much value to that medium, and I wish dealerships would embrace that a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think especially for what I call, the mid-sized groups of 10 to 50 stores, where because an individual store is going to have a hard time finding the budget to do that kind of high quality video production. If they want to make a real priority out of it, they can. But I think the value to if you got 10 stores, 15 stores, 20 stores, you got a brand that matters at that point, right? And by matters, I mean people know it's more than just one store. And so putting some energy into how do we present our brand in video, I think is a good investment of time and energy. But if I see video at all now in my consulting practice and people using the dollars and cents tool, it's almost always pretty bad in terms of performance and actually related to sales. And people will, wave their hands around, well, you're just doing brand awareness, blah, blah, blah. I think it's just, nobody wants to see 20-minute or 20 seconds of canned pre-roll with car footage that came from the OEM with a little banner. That's not, it's not interesting or compelling. And so I think I would say find a way to do video would be, on my list of things you should do in 2020, but only if you're going to do it well is the important, because it's so easy to waste a bunch of money on something that's not going to work if you don't put the creative energy into it up front.
It is, and we got to start looking. I would say also for 2020, just kind of add to that, is that we got to start looking at our marketing efforts as kind of stepping stones. This idea that we put a singular piece of creative out there or a single ad out there and just assume that one ad or that one piece of creative is going to bring that conversion, it doesn't happen anymore. Like, it doesn't happen anymore. People, I'm seeing people engaging with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of different creative over multiple platforms before they even go to the dealership's website.
Yep.
Like, the consumer's hungry. They want more of a compelling reason to even visit your website. Don't even get me started on form fills. Oh, I know, right? I was with a dealership the other day. They just looked me straight in the face and they're like, Jason, we want more. We just want more form fills. And I'm like, God, I'll go down this rabbit hole. Right. First off, how the hell they're even handling the ones they got? Right. But then I said, okay, fine. Let's say hypothetically you're handling them really well. Let's just say that. You're not, but let's say you are. Go to the website. Go to any dealership's website out there. What the hell is the value proposition for someone to fill out any one of these forms? It's atrocious. It's like,
I saw a tweet the other day where somebody said, I just filled out a form on a car dealership website and now I'm going to have to go into the witness protection program.
Right? Like, it's just, consumers are smart, right? Look, over the last 5 or 7 years, we put a button on our website called e-price, and all of a sudden, boom, leads went up by 25%. Problem is, we spent 5 years where no one actually got an e-price.
Well, I always tell people, if you want more leads, the quickest way to do that is take prices off your website. Your leads will, triple overnight. Now,
sure,
whether that's going to have the right impact on your business is a different story altogether. I think a potentially controversial point of view on all this too is I think SEO is an investment channel for advertising for 2020. I agree. Think the organic traffic is almost always double the value of any other source of traffic. And a lot of times we think that it just happens, right? My organic traffic is what it is. And the days of being able to buy some SEO package where some wizard in the back is going to know which buttons to tick to make the Google machine happy are over.
It's long gone and dead.
Yeah, exactly. So content, that's another great use for video, is sort of why I'm bringing this up, right? I think just how many dealers have a good, how do I pair my Bluetooth phone to this car video on their website? Or how do I get the tire iron out of this car? Or these, I think if you go into a dealership and you go into the service department and you say, make me a list of the 5 top calls you get from people who are looking for this button, or can't pair their phone or whatever, and you go off and make content around that. That sort of creativity and helpfulness. If you spend, let's say I'm going to spend, I'll get a high number, $15,000 producing some high quality video content to help answer those questions and needs, you'll get more traffic organically for that $15,000. It's going to actually impact sales than if you spend 15 grand on SEM.
Well, and you know what? I think SEM and SEO have to have a relationship with each other. So I'll tell you a little bit kind of like how we would do it, right? We like to get very audience specific, like super hyper targeted with our video creative. We did a video the other day for a Nissan Rogue, and it was literally targeting massage therapist. Talk about a small bucket of people, right? Yeah, right. But we literally grabbed a massage table and showed them how easy it was to slip in and out and to store all this equipment in there, right? Then we also did another one for Uber drivers, right? Another one, just showing them why this is a good vehicle, how this kind of supports your efforts if you're going to be an Uber driver. Again, small audience out there, right? Now, we're putting both those videos out there. We're starting with SEM, all right, to put the videos out there to the prospective audiences, okay? Yep. Now, how one relates and how one engages with the other will then give us the idea of which area that we need to go focus some organic efforts on.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
So it's not, see, we think of like SEM on one side of the table, and it's like SEO is a whole other department, and it's over there, and they don't necessarily work with each other, but they actually are very well married to each other. You know, in this particular case, we actually saw that the video that we did for the massage therapist actually took off. Would have never guessed. Seriously, would have never guessed. Okay. But now it has spawned a series of content about massage therapists and the vehicles that are required. Because I guess in our area, there are a lot of massage therapists that drive. They don't, because it is so bloody expensive to have any type of retail space here. A lot of them are door to door.
Lots of cities in the U.S. too, where you have massage therapists coming door to door for those exact reasons. It's sort of everybody's advertised, I'm the Uber of whatever, but the Uber of massage, as I suppose, I've seen it advertised more than once. And I think that's, if you go off and look at your SEM tool and your SEO tool and say, I haven't done this, but so this is an educated guess, but people searching for best car for Uber or best car for massage, there's probably significant untapped search volume for those things, and that's the level of creativity that I think doesn't get applied often enough in our industry. Conventional wisdom up a few years ago was, I need my web platform vendor should be doing my SEO, and there was this thought of because they know the platform so well, because they know how to add all the right metadata, and it's this leftover mentality from SEO is about tricking the machines.
Yep.
And I think that's totally wrong. I think
it is.
There's no good reason why your web platform vendor is any better at SEM or SEO than somebody who does SEO for a living. So I think it would be, dealers should push back on that mentality of, because that's still the talk track as far as I've heard it is, pay us extra to handle SEO for your website, and the reason we should do it is because we know our platform better than everyone else. And it's a fundamentally creative enterprise. Getting the content you produce to show up on your website is the easy part.
It is, right? It's actually the easy part. I was just thinking more about 2020. If I could add just a little thing to that as well, it's just I would love dealerships to start thinking or start talking, not more or less on what they want to advertise, but whom they want to market to. Like we need to get more audience specific with our efforts. The fact that look, this is the beautiful thing about digital is that I don't have to put one piece of creative out there and assume that one piece of creative is going to be relevant to every single person out there that's shopping for a Chevy Cruze. I guess they're not making it anymore. A Toyota Corolla.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, we actually have a product called Pinpoint that is really targeting that need. One of the things I realized, again, after starting Wisely, is that dealerships have more first-party data than almost any other industry. But it's so hard to use. I mean, in any other industry, I mean, I can go into my HubSpot instance and advertise to a group of people in my CRM and, in the next 5 minutes, right?
Easy peasy. Yep.
And we don't have that capability in automotive. So anyway, we developed this tool called Pinpoint. Its whole purpose in life is converting your DMS data into audiences that you can advertise to. So if you want to say, one of my favorites is anybody who's been in and had declined service, you can keep an evergreen audience out there that people have had declined service in the last 30 days and advertise to them. And we started out doing that. It was originally intended to be like a better advertising product where we were going to sell the whole sort of soup to nuts advertising. And quickly I realized that the real benefit, I'm a big fan of, we should do us Wisely as well as everyone else in the world. You should do stuff that you're better than other people at. And we're better than other people at making data sing and dance, not necessarily at doing, advertising execution. So anyway, we've got this product that will convert DMS data into audiences. And, I really think figuring, whether it's with us or any other way, making better use of your first party data to target your advertising is another 2020 thing. I think that's not happening very much at all.
It's not. It's very little, but it's also why there's so much opportunity in it.
Yep.
You're not having to change a whole lot. You're not having. It's just literally a different mindset. It's identifying the audience that's going to help me meet my goal and objective, and then reverse engineering the creative that's appropriate to them.
Yep.
Instead of being a creative first industry, which is what we are, it's literally what we are. Let's just put ads out there. Let's just put prices out there. But instead reversing it and saying, okay, well, let's first define who we want to target, and then what would they actually care about. I know for a fact, looking at dealerships data, that the cash rebates in this specific dealership and this specific demographic are being taken advantage by an older audience. Okay, that's who is taking those cash discounts. Well, they're retired. They have a little more of a nest egg. All right, they appreciate that $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. But if I know that and I have that data, why the hell am I sending this? I'm wasting money, stupid amount of money. All right, pushing this message out to everyone instead of just targeting this older one. I was looking at dealerships data the other day, and it was clear that they didn't do a whole lot of leasing, but the leasing that they did do was between the ages of 24 and 35. Mm-hmm. Right, and most of them were singles, not a lot of families. And I'm just like, well, okay, so why are you putting a lease offer targeting everyone?
Right.
When your data's telling you this is who's leasing.
I think it's left over from this mentality of give me a name and a face and I can sell a car, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I think that drives a lot of this behavior. I'd rather have one name, and shifting that is hard. A lot of times because the way you get promoted through the leadership ranks at a dealership is generally through the sales channel. So
true.
You've got people who have been success. One of the things in life is you don't stop doing stuff that has historically worked for you, right? So if you've been successful in your life and your career so far by focusing on whoever walks in the door and I'm going to sell them a car, absent some traumatic thing, why would you think that that's not the way you should behave, right? So I think that culture and that mentality is sort of what keeps us from executing on those strategies more often, I think.
I agree. And I think, we've done a great job, I think, of really just kind of highlighting, the 4 or 5 things that if dealerships, I mean, hell, even if they just embrace 1 or 2 of them moving into 2020, I think they could see some really significant changes in their actionable analytics.
Yeah, I agree completely.
James, I definitely think that there's going to be a second part to this podcast. I could do this literally for another hour with you easily. This has been so much fun. But for everybody out there that is listening or watching right now and would love to connect with you and learn more about what you guys are doing, what is the best way to do so?
They can get us on our website, so www.wizely.us, or they can get me personally, james@wisely.us. And either one of those is fine.
Awesome. James, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no problem. I agree. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
We covered a bunch of great topics today. What stood out most to you? Be sure to let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to like the post and share it to keep the conversation going. You can follow Jason on all social media platforms by following Strategy with Jason. You can find him pretty well everywhere you can share content. I hope we were able to get you thinking. And until the next time, have a great day.